Welcome back to Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization, where we're always seeking better ways to challenge the status quo and help create an extraordinary future. I'm Ira Wolfe. Today's episode is a special one. Instead of diving into a new conversation, we're going to step into a time machine. Over the past year, in addition to hosting over 100 Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization shows, I've had an opportunity to be a guest on dozens of other podcasts. Today, we'll revisit one of my favorite guest appearances. It's a chance to echo the insights and inspiration shared there, right here with Googleization Nation. I hope you'll enjoy listening as much as I did sharing my vision for the future of work.
Welcome to the Change Book Podcast. My name is Rachel Best, and this is our co-host.
I'm Nicole Harvick.
And this is the Change Book series. It is the fastest growing self-empowerment book series on the planet.
This spans over 30 countries, and we now bring them all together in a powerful podcast destined to change people from all corners of the globe.
So go ahead and grab your pen and paper, because our guest today is going to share a lot of amazing tips and inspiration that you're definitely going to want to write down.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Harvick, and I am the co-host of the Change Book Podcast. And before we get started today, I want to wish my co-host, Rachel Best, a very happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. It did not slip by me, so I wanted to make sure you get it out there and you get a lot of happy birthdays today. So anyway, and we have a wonderful guest today. I have talked to Ira Wolfe before. He's a man of wisdom, of knowledge, and I cannot wait to talk to him. So with that, Ira, welcome to the stage. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hi to both of you, and happy birthday, Rachel, and happy holidays to both of you. It's wonderful to be here. It's good to see you guys and be part of this community that has evolved over the last over 2023, but over the last few months. So a little bit about me. As you can see from the background, whichever way I go here, my new company is AQ Plus, which is Adaptability Quotient Plus. Really focused on helping people become more comfortable with being uncomfortable. We're living in a world of exponential change. We call it VUCA. I call it Googleization, which is that convergence of technology, business, and people. But everybody's struggling a bit with change. I mean, the world is moving much faster, and it's more complex, and there's all these things going on. And I had a business for almost 30 years. Sold it last year, still involved with it, but it was focused on pre-employment and leadership testing. But I sold that to be able to kind of devote my next chapter, which is what Change Book is about, is how does everybody create a new chapter, to focus on adaptability and helping people, change. And we're all in the business of helping people shift their behaviors, but it's all about mindset.
Well, Rachel, that's right up your alley, mindset. So Ira, can you tell us a little bit about how a person would shift their mindset?
Oh, yeah. We've got about 6 hours to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, I know it's not done with the snap of a finger. I know.
Yeah. So I also have a podcast, Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization. And just last week we had, and I encourage people to go listen to that, but just last week we had John Gomes was on. He's a neuroscientist, brilliant guy. Love talking to him. The podcast just came out and it's live streamed. But that's his focus. I mean, and he's a neuroscientist, and he's spent almost 30 to 40 years studying, this. And he came up, he helped me, and we're all still learning about this because this is all new, especially thanks to neuroscience. And I'm not going to go deep into the weeds with that. But his explanation of and description of mindset was, it's how we make sense of the world. And that could be good or bad. We can make mindsets, it in turn creates our behavior because we'll respond to our mindset. but we often looked at mindset as like it's the lens we see the world. But it's beyond that, because it's really how we make sense of it. So give you an example. I talk a lot about fixed and growth mindset. And we think it's, well, if we train people and we show them the opportunity to grow, that this is better, here's an opportunity, that they will just say, well, thank you. We're ready to make that shift. And we know that's not happening. And the reason why is, and this was John was so helpful, is that because the fixed mindset, or where we are, or the status quo, or being miserable, or grieving, or being unhappy makes sense to us. If we lost a loved one, or we got fired from a job, or we don't have enough money to put on the table, or we're unhappy with what we do, it makes sense to us that happened to us, because bad things happen to people. That's just life. We just have to learn how to cope with it. We accept this lower bar. So I love the definition of, it's a long-winded explanation, but I think it was important, is mindset is really just how we make sense of the world. And in order to help people make that shift, we have to help them see that it's better. There is a better alternative. And we have to do it in incremental steps, because we just want people to take a leap. And I work primarily with businesses. They're not patient. Business leaders and managers are not patient people to say, well, we're trying to change somebody's way of thinking. And they go, well, so do you think you can do that like in 30 days? You think you can do that over the weekend? Or if we hire you for 3 coaching sessions, is that enough? And it's not. We're trying to literally rewire things going on. It's like
I know sometimes she has wonky internet, so we lost her. So were you done with your thought?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that, Ira. That's so good. I like Nicole said, I study the brain and the mind, and I think it's so fascinating. And you're so right that it's our model of the world, right? And so whatever people think their model of the world is, and it makes sense to them, right? So that's
yeah.
really-
Well, I think that's such an important distinction, because we again, like you, I've been talking about it's how we see the world, but I think that the important part was, but it also makes sense to them. It's not just that they see the world and you can show them another angle. Well, if you turn 90 degrees, the world looks different, and they go, oh yeah, but the other one made sense to me.
right.
That doesn't make sense. And to make that shift, whether it's 90 degrees or 1 degree, is people are going to have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. People, and it's scary. It is, and no one likes to fail. And if you don't have good support, I mean, it's complex, because you don't have good support systems. If you're not in the right culture, I got in when I got into this business. I was introduced to a model, and while I don't use the assessment anymore, the model was phenomenal. It really taught me how to look at life differently. It's called the quality of motivation, and we develop these behaviors, and some behaviors are productive and some behaviors are non-productive. And the problem is the non-productive behaviors give us short-term benefits. We get gains from them. For example, one of them was called self-defeating behavior. So it's either, well, there were 2 sides. The productive behavior was attainment. So it's that drive to always grow, to learn, to be better, to acquire things, whether it was getting more money or getting more knowledge. But then there was also, or just exercising, being healthier. But then there was this counterproductive behavior which was called self-defeating behavior. And we're at the end of the year, and we're talking about New Year's resolutions, and it's like, hey, we're all going to be in better shape. We're going to stop doing this. We're going to do this. We're going to get a new job. We're going to be better. And the challenge with it was that the self-defeating behavior would be something like you and I go out to dinner, and or get a snack, and they had the last coffee or the last dessert. Whatever. What's your favorite pie? What's your favorite dessert?
Oh, anything chocolate.
Okay, so they go out and they go, You can't believe how busy we were today. We only have one more piece of that chocolate pie. And that's what the reason we went there. So although we both, I don't like chocolate, but that I would say, boy, I was really digging that. But I know you, Rachel, this is your birthday, and you deserve to have it, and you get it. And you go, you're such a good friend, and I really appreciate that. And you pat me on the back, and I feel good for a minute, and then we leave, and I go, darn, I was really hoping to get that chocolate. I could taste that pie and I didn't get it. And that's the self-defeating behavior. So there's a short-term gain we get from that, but there's a long-term negative consequences. And there's also obviously more important things. But we are hardwired with all these short-term gains from behavior. And that's the world that makes sense to us because we can get immediate gratification from somebody telling us what a nice person we are. Or if we lose something, one of the other ones was one of the other non-productive behaviors, counterproductive, not non-productive, but counterproductive behaviors, was self-sabotage. And it's like, oh, I can't believe I lost my phone, or I lost my wallet again. I left it someplace. And people say, oh, that's okay, we'll help you, get it back. And boy, and i can't I can't tell you how many times I've lost my phone, or I left my wallet someplace. The world's just so busy. That's okay. And people come to your rescue. They don't come to your rescue when you're succeeding. In fact, some people are jealous, but they love the fact that, and unfortunately, misery loves company. And and how I got into this, and it wasn't from, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a personal psychologist. I probably work with business. But we got in there and we would recognize like company cultures that were, the moment you walked in, you can feel that it was toxic. And there would be clicks, and we worked with this call center, and they would bring in, they had huge turnover. When I say huge, I mean, we're talking, they only had 30 seats and they hired 500 people a year. I mean, they didn't even get through they had 5 days of training and they didn't even show up for the first day of work. So it was terrible. But there were 7 people. We called them the Magnificent Seven. And soon as somebody would come in, they would take bets on how long that person would last. And if they didn't like somebody, they drove them out. And they would literally prove that no one could do the job as well as they could. And go, but the problem was the owners wanted to clone those 7 people. They wanted more like them. And we told them, that's the reason you don't hire anybody. And they go, but they're the top performers. And they said, they're only top performers because they drive everybody else away and you have a miserable client. What if you isolated them, put them on this pedestal in another room or in another row, and then you just dealt with the other 23 people? Within like 1 year, they cut their turnover down. They still hired a lot, but they hired 193 people instead of 497. And could you imagine? So they didn't have to bring on 300 more people. They actually could spend time after they onboarded somebody and they trained them to work with those people. And so they started with keeping people rather than 5 days, 30 days, than 60 days and 90 days. It wasn't a career. But again, people, mindset's tough, but our mindset, what makes sense to us is it makes sense. And if that's the only world that people knew, that's difficult. That's a challenge. So what I liked about the book, getting back to the change book, and the community, that's my perspective. I mean, I'm probably one of the few that focuses mostly on the business environment and business people. But we had authors, like you. I mean, you're talking about empowerment. I mean, that's not my niche. Mine is about adaptability. Mine is about helping people with change. And now from leaders, they have to help people empower other people. People have to feel empowered and able to do this. And I'm doing it through the lens of adaptability. So we talk a lot about grit and resilience and growth mindset. but also about the company culture. You have to create a good environment in order for that to happen. But there's a lot of people just dealing with individuals. There, we have co-authors that are talking about the grieving process. I have a good friend. He just lost his wife. They were married for almost 60 years. He's in his 80s. He's still. I'll tell you, he was super active and vibrant. But the last couple of years, because he was the caregiver, took a lot out of him. And it's a year later, and he is still in mourning. He's deeply grieving. And that's you hear so often that one spouse dies, the other one goes, and I'm worried about him. But that's not my. I mean, I want to help him as a friend. But there was a couple of authors that wrote about grieving process. There were people that had lost limbs. Their a health condition changed things. I mean, everything that people can relate to on an everyday basis, because you don't have to look far, and somebody has a story that has deeply affected them, whether it's a friend or whether it's their family. So that's what the Change book, that's what it was about, and it's complex because we've got so many things going on around us, and in the past it was just about coping skills. It was just about helping people put one foot in front of the other and get through the day, and that's not living. That's literally just breathing. So, and again, in business, in fact, I'm writing an article this week. I have a newsletter on this stuff on neuroscience, and that's what I was talking about, was the difference between coping, being satisfied, and then in the workplace being engaged and thriving. So if you look at those four, I grew up, I'm an older baby boomer, and we grew up in an age when coping skills were good enough. That's what people patted us on the back. And then somewhere in the 80s and 90s, it became, it was about employee satisfaction or just life satisfaction. And that was good enough. And I go, you're the lucky ones. You don't understand how bad my situation is, but I'm coping. I'm good. And then it became in the last 10 years about engagement. How do you feel connected? How do you have that synchrony? How do you feel part of a community? And everybody says, oh, that's what we're striving for, but we're not. We're really striving for thriving. Yeah, and just one instance, and I did a little bit of a test with this. I've had about 1,000 people download the book. Okay. And I set up a campaign, and I worked. It was an interesting process because Facebook was not my audience. I was on Facebook, but it wasn't for business. It wasn't my target audience. So I really hadn't used it before. And I ran a couple ads. And one of them was about helping people become more engaged. One of them was about help. I can't remember. Career. Are you feeling stuck in your career and you want to change? But the headline that stuck, the one that I have a 70%, and I'm not. This isn't hyperbole. If anybody doesn't believe me, I'll send them the stat. I have a 73 to 74% conversion rate on my ads. Now, typically, if you can get 20, it's good. 74%. The headline, feeling stuck. People feel stuck in their lives. But if you talk to people, and if I talk to you and I tell you how horrible my life is and how stuck I am and what's happening with my kids and my family and my employer, and they go, I got the same thing going on in my life. And you go, but we're getting through it. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, okay, that makes sense. It's not just me. Life is just hard. And I guess I should be happy with the way it is. Which is the opposite of empowerment, by the way. But yeah, so that's where we are. And that's where, it was totally took me out of talking about being uncomfortable. Totally took me out of the game when Jim and first, when I had first conversation, it's like, yeah, I get it, but I'm not in the first personal development space. I mean, I am, but I do it through business. I'm not really in that space. It's not a good fit. But I also recognize that a lot of people are struggling, and that adaptability isn't exclusive. It's not only people in business have to adapt. We
Mhm.
all need to
Mhm.
adapt. We all need to do things differently. And I was happy to share my story with it, because I was in, I had a super successful career, um, that I was that I didn't. I hated to go to work. I mean, I hated Sundays because it was a day from Monday.
Mhm.
I found every distraction in the world. I was playing golf 6 days a week. I we traveled a little bit. I had a home near a golf course. I mean, we had a home by the beach. I mean, and it looked great on paper.
Mhm.
It was great on paper, but I was coping.
Mhm.
And as soon as I made a huge decision to give up my profession, and people would say, "Well, what are you going to do for a living? What do you know?" And it's like, I'm going to live.
Mhm.
And I did. And I started another business, and it became successful, and I sold that business, and now I'm doing this. So it is possible. So that was my story. It's not going to be for everybody, but there's 22 other great stories in our version, our 19th edition.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
I
it's
have.
a vibrant community. Sorry, I'm doing all the talking here, Rachel.
No, you're great. You're great. This is good. So, when you created this business, did you just decide like that because of all the knowledge and all the things, like what was like, how did you know to start this business?
Well, I guess which is this business. So let me take you back, and I'll share a little bit of the story if people want to read it. So my first career, and I started this in fifth grade. I talked about this in my TED talk, that when my fifth grade teacher said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I'm a W, as my last name's Wolf. I think I was third from the last. I think one of my best friends was Bob York, and he was there, and then we had a Bobby Zimmerman. Um, so I was next, almost at the end. So I got to hear all these great stories, and I stood up and said, "I want to be a dentist." I didn't have any dentists in my family. I don't know why I said that. I guess it was influenced from my parents. It's like, well, that would be, you can be a doctor, attorney, or a dentist, a dentist. Um, and I continued that. It's like anytime anyone asked me, and I went through that, and I graduated, I got to a good college, got to dental school, and it was like when I got there, it was like climbing the peak, and then you realize it's like, okay, next year will be better. Like, okay, now I'm through school. It's the first year of practice. Now it'll be better. Um, but I left. So I did that for 15 years, and I did it well. It was a huge growing practice. Um, I loved as I said in the TED talk, I loved everything about dentistry, but but dentistry. So how did I make the move? What did It was out of frustration, and my daughter graduated college, and my son was out of school, and it was like, I'm just going to do it. I mean, I was in my early 40s when I left, and it was like I even fired my accountant, because my accountant said, you'll never have a job as easy as this and make as much money. And I go, you're fired. you, I need your support of how to help me do it. How Advise me what I need to do to help make the change financially. But and I started this other business, and people said, "What did you know about it?" Well, I always loved the leadership. I loved managing people. I loved the customer service. I loved working with people. I loved the marketing. I loved running the business, and I missed the people. We had a great team. I haven't practiced in 28 years, and I still get Christmas cards from my staff that hasn't been under my employment for 35 years. Some of them haven't worked for me since 1989, 1990, the
Wow.
early 90s. They still keep in touch with me. Um, Patients still keep in touch, and they go, "Oh, we still miss you." I mean, it's like multi generations away from when I did it.
Mhm.
So I love doing, being with the people, helping them overcome their fears. Just didn't enjoy what I had to do in the end.
Right.
So I left. And similarly with the current business, how I got to this was through the way we were helping people, but my fascination's always been about the future.
Mhm.
My office was computerized in 1987. So, and I'm not, I mean, I love, it's not that I love tech. I just love progressing. I like improving. And
Mhm.
if technology can help me improve and be better, be more efficient, be more productive, um, I did it. But you have to enjoy, you have to love what you did. And I found the part that I loved doing was, really focusing on helping people understanding what the future was going to be like and helping them make that transition. And just as we started a couple minutes ago, and I know we're going to run out of time here, when John Gomes said last week that mindset is about how people make sense of the world, not just the lens that they see the world through. Even doing this full time, it clicked with me.
Mhm.
And I've been really focused on the future of work for 20 years. So, but it was, I didn't have the tools. And then a few years ago, it was adaptability to this AQ, the adaptability quotient. And so it gave me a model and a framework and tools and really says, no, it's not just grit. No, it's being just more resilient. Getting back up when you get knocked down isn't the holy grail. It's not the end all and be all. It's not enough because you got to move forward.
Mhm.
And more importantly is sometimes you have to shift direction. So how do you shift direction? Well, you need grit. You do need grit. You need resilience, but you need you need a growth mindset. You need an open mindset. But even that's not enough because we have to unlearn our old behaviors. We have to learn new behaviors, but then we have to break those darn habits and those behaviors that worked in the past, but they don't work in the future. And all that's it's not it's easy because there is a roadmap, but people have to want to do it. And as leaders and managers and coaches and consultants, we need to become better at understanding how to help people take those micro steps and become feel more empowered and more confident and have the courage to be able to do it. And we have to have, get people to feel that I'll give it a shot.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I mean, we have this great divide between people that are progressing and people that are falling behind, and there's a lot of people struggling, and it's not only in their jobs, but I mean, we have a loneliness epidemic,
Mhm.
we have depression, we have people resorting to drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of people to be helped, and that gap is widening. So I'm excited to be part of this community. And I don't personally have all the answers. Again, my focus is mostly on people, in business, and I certainly can work with individuals. But there's so many different. Life is hard, but there's help, and I think the book is just a great group of people that we would have never met. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe you and I, because we're in similar, talking about things, but there's a number of the co-authors that there's no way our paths would have actually ever crossed
Mhm. Yeah.
other other than just by dumb luck. And here we are in this community all focused on the same thing, helping people not just cope but thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. You said so many good things. And something I've learned too with people is that um they have to want it also. And so we can show them the tools, but and show them the direction, but they have to want it also. And so, that's one thing that I wanted to touch on that you had said earlier. And you're so right. Like there's so many great people in the Change Book series that I've just got an opportunity to connect with and learn from. And we are all very similar. Like we're all in different things, but we're all wanting to make change. And, when we can all just come together and be that positive change and share, like, I like how the book is set up of how it is, where were we? What did we go through, where we're at now, and then what's next. And so for you, like being part of the Change series, like what is next for you, like going into closing out 2023, going into 2024, what's next, and what's your hope with the Change Book community in the series?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one is I'm still getting my, my learning to meet, not learning to meet, but meeting all the people, understanding where everybody is. It's a great resource for people. I've been sharing it. So, when I share the book, when I have 1,000 people download the book, they're not just reading my story. And I don't even know if they read my story. When I put it out there, it's like, here's 22 life inspiring stories. So it may resonate with you that people loved your story, or we've had, as I said, we had at least 2 different authors, maybe 3, that talked about grieving. Fortunately, I'm not. Although my mother passed away in April, but she was almost 100 and she had a great life, and she's just a few months short of that. So yeah, sure, there was a loss, but not to this extent that other people felt that. Could have been a child, could have been a spouse, could have been a young parent, not a 99, almost 100-year-old. So there's a lot of things. There's just good opportunities for everybody else. What am I hoping for? It's tough. There's a couple billion people on the planet that are struggling, that are coping. It's unrealistic to think that we even if they all wanted it, that we could change it. But it's reaching out to the people. In 2024, every year is going to be more crazy. Next year, if you're living in the U.S., not only do we have the economy to deal with, not only do we have all the geopolitical conflicts to deal with, what's going on in Gaza and Ukraine, all the news, with jobs, with our work, with our family life, with our kids, with everything, but we got a political, we got our presidential race, which has just become not something you look forward to. It's become divisive and confrontational and nasty, and that definitely impacts the mood of people. So we'll have a lot of work to do. So I'm just looking at, as I said, I like that we do our podcast every week, and I do a lot of writing and work with a lot of people, and just trying to constantly find better ways to help people thrive. And it's going to take a village more. It's going to take more than a village, a large city of people to help.
Whole country, right?
Yeah. And obviously there's a lack of leadership in many regards, and that's not a political statement, but just people need to change, and the way we used to do it in the past isn't going to be the way we can do it in the future. And so hopefully I can be a part of that and give some guidance, and appreciate what you and Nicole do, and the whole community, and Jim have really brought together a widely diverse group of people, in all different walks of life, with all different experiences, and somewhere in there is anybody's going to be able to connect with at least one of the many, many different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right. There's such a diverse amount of people from all over the world, 30 countries, I believe. And so I love the diversity of just learning people from all different walks of life, like experiences, and just everything that people bring everybody brings something to the table, and we're all, the one thing that brings us together, unity, is we all want change, and we've all been in change, and we're all very aligned when it comes to, we want better for other people, for the world. And so I think that, with everything that you just said about, all the things that are going on around us, when there's some of us that can come together, because we see that there's a need in the world. And so, and like how we used to do things, that doesn't work anymore. And so we have to shift, and we have to change and evolve into, okay, well, that doesn't work anymore. So what does work? And, when you talk about the neurology science, and all about the mind and the brain, like it's, if only, that's my passion, is if only people knew how powerful their mind was, and or it is, how powerful their mind is, and that they can have, if they want it, that they can do it. And so it requires them to put work in, but it can be done. And that's my passion, is just sharing with people, awakening people to the awareness that that you aren't just, oh, this is just the way I am, this is just the way I've been. No, you can change that if you choose and if you want to. And there's tools that you can do to change that. And so I love that you talk about, all the things that you talked about today. It was just fantastic. And I'm so grateful that we got the opportunity. I'm sorry we lost Nicole. She never.
Yeah, I'm sorry too. I know she's always she's an important part of this conversation. So we'll have to do it again.
Yeah. I think one time you got with her, now this time you got with me. Now maybe the third time's the charm, right?
That's right. Yeah, hopefully I don't drop off the third time, right?
Right. Well, Ira, thank you so much for taking the time to connect with us today. Do you have any last closing words that you would like to share?
Well, I close every one of my podcasts with don't let the shift hit your plans. We're in a constant world of change. Next year, I hope things go back to normal. We talk about living in the never normal, and so we have to learn how to thrive in that, and not just cope. And the good news, just as you said, I mean, our mindsets are a powerful thing. And I mean, just a little tweak. When you said is that, well, that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is you. We're not changing you. We're changing how you respond to the environment. You'll be a better you if you respond differently to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about changing you. So we're the only ways you can do that. I say it facetiously, with drugs. Drugs and really deep therapy. And that's not what any of us are doing. We're just helping people, trying to look at the world a little different, make sense of it, and be happy.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate you taking your time. And
my pleasure.
Until next time, we will see you all later.
And happy birthday and happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Yes, happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Nicole Harvick, and this is my co-host,
Rachel Best. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks for watching Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization. Be sure to listen to the podcast and follow us on YouTube.